By now, you already learned quite some things in R. Data structures such as vectors, matrices, and lists have no secrets for you anymore. However, R is a statistical programming language, and in statistics, you'll often be working with datasets. Such datasets are typically comprised of observations or instances. All these observations have some variables associated with them. You can have, for example, a dataset of 5 people. Each person is an instance, and the properties about these people, such as, for example, their name, their age, and whether they have children, are the variables. How could you store such information in R? In a matrix? Not really, because the name would be a character and the age would be a numeric. These don't fit in a matrix. In a list, maybe? This could work because you can put practically anything in a list. You could create a list of lists where each sublist is a person with a name, an age, and so on. However, the structure of such a list is not really useful to work with. What if you want to know all the ages, for example? You'd have to write a lot of R code just to get what you want. But what data structure could we use then? Meet the data frame. It's the fundamental data structure to store typical data sets. It's pretty similar to matrix because it also has rows and columns. Also for data frames, the rows correspond to the observations, the persons in our example, while the columns correspond to the variables or the properties of each of these persons. The big difference with matrices is that a data frame can contain elements of different types. One column can contain characters, another one numerics, and yet another one logicals. That's exactly what we need to store our person's information in the dataset. We could have a column for the name, which is a character, one for the age, which is a numeric, and one logical column to denote whether the person has children. There still is a restriction on the data types, though. Elements in the same column should be of the same type. That's not really a problem because in one column, the age column, for example, you always want a numeric because an age is always a number, regardless of the observation. So for the practical part now, creating a data frame. In most cases, you don't create a data frame yourself. Instead, you typically import data from another source. You will learn this in the next chapter. Now we use the data.frame function for this. To create our people data frame that has 5 observations and 3 variables, we have to pass the data frame function 3 vectors that are all of the length of 5. The vectors you pass correspondent to the columns. Let's create these 3 vectors first: name, age, and child. Now, calling the data frame function is simple. The printout of the data frame already shows very clearly that we're dealing with a dataset. Notice how the data frame function inferred the names of the columns from the variables names you passed it. In the next pages of this chapter, you will discover some more features of data frames.